Victoria Sterling tore the diagnostic report out of the mechanic's hands and slammed it flat against the hood of the dead car. "Don't you dare stand there and tell me a $40 million machine is beyond repair." 3 certified teams had already walked away from the most valuable prototype her company had ever built, and every second it sat lifeless on this cracked little street in nowhere, Ohio, she was bleeding a billion-dollar deal. Then a grease-stained single dad crossed the road, looked at the car for all of 10 seconds, and said 6 words that would crack her entire company wide open. "Someone wanted this to look broken." Before we go on, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled, and hit subscribe if you believe real talent doesn't always wear a suit. The black prototype sat dead in the middle of Main Street like a fallen animal, and Victoria Sterling stood over it with her arms crossed so tight her knuckles had gone white. "Say it again," she said. The mechanic from the third shop, a heavy-set man named Dale, who'd been crawling under the chassis for the better part of an hour, wiped his hands on a rag and would not meet her eyes. "Ma'am, I've looked at everything I know how to look at. So did the boys from Henderson's. So did the dealership crew you flew in from Columbus." Same answer 3 times. "Whatever this thing is, it ain't talking to itself anymore. The computers are gone. The brain's gone." He shrugged, and the shrug made her furious. "Beyond repair." "It is not beyond repair." Victoria's voice came out clipped precise, the voice she used on boardrooms full of men twice her age. "Cars do not simply die. There is a cause. There is a fix. There is always a fix. Not one I can find." She turned away from him because she could not stand to look at his face one more second. Behind her, leaning against the open door of the car, her assistant Marcus held 2 phones and looked like a man waiting to be executed. "Marcus, still trying the field office. What is the number now?" He swallowed. "If we miss the demonstration tomorrow morning, fully miss it, not late miss it, Halloran Group walks. Their counsel already sent the language. There's a clause. Failure to deliver the working prototype voids the exclusivity terms, and I know what the clause says. I wrote half of it." She pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. "I need a number, Marcus, not a recitation." $1.2 billion, he said quietly. "Over the life of the contract. If we lose tomorrow, we lose all of it. And the board. Don't say the board to me. The board will say it to you whether I do or not." That was the trouble with Marcus. He was right too often, and he had a way of being right at exactly the moment she least wanted company in it. She looked at the car again. Sterling Dynamics had poured 4 years and a frightening amount of her own reputation into this machine. It was supposed to be the thing that proved she hadn't inherited her father's company so much as outgrown it. It was supposed to drive itself onto a stage tomorrow morning and make a room full of skeptics into believers. Instead, it had coasted to a stop at 2:14 that afternoon, on a state route outside a town she'd never heard of, in front of a hardware store and a diner and a barber shop with a striped pole that still actually turned. A small crowd had gathered the way small towns gather. Old men mostly. Men with caps and crossed arms, and the patient, unhurried curiosity of people who had nowhere they urgently needed to be. They watched her the way you watch weather. "What are you all looking at?" she snapped before she could stop herself. Nobody answered. One of them, a man in his 70s with a face like a dried apple, just smiled a little, and that was worse than anything he could have said. "Ma'am." Dale tried again, gentler now. "There's a Marriott about 40 minutes back toward." "I don't want a Marriott, Dale. I want my car to work." And that was when the door of the little shop across the street opened, the one with the hand-painted sign reading Carter and Daughter Auto, and a man stepped out wiping his hands on a shop towel with a girl of maybe 10 trailing 2 steps behind him. He didn't hurry. That was the first thing Victoria noticed, and the first thing that annoyed her about him. The whole world was on fire, and this man crossed the street like he was strolling out to check the mail. He was tall and a little stooped at the shoulders, the way men get when they've spent 20 years bent over engines. Faded flannel sleeves shoved up. A streak of grease along one forearm and another on his jaw. He had the kind of face that had been handsome once and was now just tired and kind. The girl beside him had his same dark hair and a gap where a tooth was growing back in. "Afternoon," he said. to the crowd, not to her. "Dale, Tom." "Logan," said Dale, with what sounded an awful lot like relief. The man Logan stopped about 6 feet from the car and looked at it. Just looked. Hands in his pockets now. His daughter stood beside him and looked at it too, mimicking him, head tilted at the exact same angle, and despite everything, Victoria felt something in her chest twist at the sight of the two of them standing there like that. "This the car everybody's been hollering about," he said. It wasn't a question. "This is a $40 million piece of proprietary engineering," Victoria said. "And unless you have a degree in automotive software systems, I'd appreciate it if you didn't put your hands on it." Logan glanced at her then. The first real look. And he didn't flinch, didn't bristle, didn't do any of the things men usually did when she took that tone, which she found irritatingly that she noticed. "No degree," he said. "Just 30 years of cars." 30 years of these cars. "No, ma'am. Nobody's got 30 years of these. This thing's new. Nobody's got 30 years of new." He almost smiled. "But a car's a car. Underneath all the fancy, it's still trying to do the same 4 or 5 things it's always tried to do." 3 certified teams looked at this vehicle today. 3, including the manufacturer's own people. "I heard." They all said the same thing. "I heard that too." He took a step closer to the car, and she felt herself stiffen. "You want to know what I think?" "Not particularly." "I think," Logan said, ignoring that completely, "when 3 smart fellas all give you the same wrong answer, it ain't because they're dumb. It's because they all started from the same wrong question." The old man with the apple face chuckled. Someone else in the crowd said mm in a low approving way, the way a congregation answers a preacher. Victoria turned to Marcus. "Are we really doing this?" Marcus, to his eternal credit, said. But his silence said everything, because Marcus had run the numbers, and Marcus knew that they had exactly 0 other options between this moment and 9 a.m. tomorrow, and a free local mechanic who wanted to embarrass himself was mathematically not worse than nothing. "Mr. Carter, Logan, Mr. Carter, do you understand that if you touch the wrong component on this vehicle, you could trigger a security lockout that even my engineers cannot reverse without a factory key that is currently 400 miles away?" "Then I'll try not to touch the wrong one." The crowd liked that. Even she, somewhere underneath the panic and the fury, hated that she didn't entirely hate it. The little girl tugged her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she said in a stage whisper that carried, "Is this the rich lady?" "Emma." "You said there was going to be a rich lady stuck in town and she was going to be real, Emma." Logan crouched down to her level, fast one hand on her shoulder, and whatever he said next, he said too quietly for anyone to hear. But the girl's face changed, the way kids' faces change when a parent reminds them of something true. She nodded, looked at Victoria, and then, surprising everyone, said, "Sorry, ma'am, I hope your car gets better." And Victoria Sterling, who had stood in front of senators and shareholders, and a profile writer from a magazine who'd called her the most feared woman in the industry, and felt nothing but cold, clean control. Victoria Sterling did not know what to do with a 10-year-old apologizing to her on a public street. "That's fine," she managed. "Thank you." Logan stood back up, looked at her. "Half hour," he said. "Give me a half hour with it. If I don't have something to tell you in a half hour, I'll walk back across that street and you never have to think about me again. Won't cost you a dime, and it won't cost you any time you weren't already going to lose." It was, she understood with some annoyance, an unanswerable offer. "Marcus." "I think," said Marcus, "that we should let the man look at the car. You think a great many things today." "It's been that kind of day." She uncrossed her arms. It cost her something to do it. 30 minutes, Mr. Carter. And you do not remove anything, you do not cut anything, and you do not. She fixed him with the full weight of the stare that had ended careers. "Break my prototype any further than it is already broken." "Yes, ma'am." "And when you fail, when Mr. Carter, not if you will do me the courtesy of not pretending you almost had it. I've had enough men today tell me how close they got." Logan looked at her for a long moment. "Lady," he said, and there wasn't any heat in it, which somehow made it land harder. I don't tell people I almost had it. Either I fix it or I don't. My daddy taught me a man who's always almost fixing things is just a man making excuses with a wrench in his hand. Then, he turned to the car. And here is the thing Victoria would think about for a long time afterward, lying awake in a Marriott 40 minutes back up the road she had not wanted to go to. The other three teams had attacked the car. They'd swarmed it. Plugged in laptops, fired up diagnostics, talked over each other in acronyms, treated it like a battlefield. Logan Carter didn't touch a single tool. He put his hands behind his back like a man walking through a museum, and he walked slowly all the way around the vehicle. Once. Then he stopped at the front and just stood there, and the strangest thing, he closed his eyes. "What is he doing?" Victoria said under her breath. "I think he's listening," said Marcus. "It's not running, there's nothing to listen to," but Logan held up one hand without turning around. The way you do when you're asking a room to be quiet. And the old men in the crowd, who clearly knew him, who clearly trusted him in a way that Victoria couldn't yet understand, went silent. The little girl went silent too. She'd seen this before. She watched her father with the absolute uncomplicated faith of a kid who has personally witnessed the man fix 100 things that other people gave up on. "When'd it die?" Logan said, eyes still closed. "What?" "Time. When'd it die? Exact as you got it." Victoria looked at Marcus. Marcus checked a phone. 2:14 this afternoon. "It just quit, or did it do anything first?" Victoria caught herself answering a small-town mechanic's interrogation, and felt absurd, and answered anyway, because the truth was, she wanted very badly for one single person today to ask the right question. It didn't just quit. The dashboard threw about 40 error codes all at once, every system at the same time. Then everything went dark. Logan opened his eyes. "All at once," he repeated. "Yes. Every system. Yes, my engineers said it was a cascade failure. One component goes and it takes the others with it, like dominoes." "Huh." Logan crouched at the front bumper, peering up under the lip of it. "Thing about dominoes," he said mostly to himself, "is they fall one at a time. That's the whole point of a domino. You can watch 'em go." He reached up under the car, slowly narrating to her without looking. "I'm just feeling along the front harness, not pulling anything," and his hand stopped. He went very still. "Huh," he said again. Different this time. "What?" He didn't answer. He stood, walked to the driver's side, opened the door. "May I?" he said, after he'd already opened it, which she'd have been angrier about if she hadn't been leaning in to see, and crouched in the footwell, looking up under the dash. A full minute passed, then another. "Mr. Carter." You said you'd have something to tell me." "I'm gonna have a lot to tell you," Logan said, and there was something different in his voice now, something she didn't like, a flatness, a care. He backed out of the footwell and stood and looked at her, and the easy small-town warmth had gone out of his face entirely, and what replaced it was the look of a man who has found something he wishes he hadn't. "Ma'am," he said, "can I ask you something and you tell me straight?" "All right, this car, before today, where'd it sleep last night?" The question was so strange that for a second she didn't process it. "It was in our secure transport facility." "Why does that?" "Who had access to it?" "That's not." "Who had access to it?" He wasn't smiling now. The crowd had gone quiet in a different way, a real way. Even Marcus had stopped looking at his phones. "Mr. Carter, I don't see what my company's internal—" "Because 3 teams looked at this car and told you it died of natural causes," Logan said, and his voice was low and level, and it carried all the way to the back of the crowd. "And cars don't die of natural causes all at once, every system at the same time, clean, no warning, no smoke, no smell, no nothing. Dominoes fall one at a time. This didn't fall." He looked at her. This was pushed. Somebody in the crowd said very softly, "Lord." Victoria felt the back of her neck go cold. "Explain that, right now, in plain English." Plain English. Logan reached back into the footwell and came out holding something between two fingers, a small connector, a coupling with two wires running into it. He held it up so she could see. You know what this is? No, neither do I exactly on a car this new. But I know what it's supposed to look like. And I know what it looks like when somebody's been at it. He turned it slightly. See how it's seated crooked factory, don't do crooked. Factory does this a million times a day. Machines do it. It's perfect every time, boring, identical. This, he tilted it, is a human being who was in a hurry and didn't think anybody'd ever look this close. Because why would they? The car's dead. You don't autopsy a body you already decided died of old age. You're saying someone... I'm saying, Logan said, I've been pulling things apart and putting them back together since I was 9 years old, and I have never once seen a machine break itself this politely. Everything off at once. No mess. No clue. Like somebody turned off the lights on their way out the door. He set the connector gently down on the seat. Cars fail ugly, ma'am. They scream and they smoke and they leave a trail. This one just laid down and went to sleep. Cars don't do that. Then what does? Logan looked at her, and for the first time all afternoon, there was no warmth and no edge in his face at all. Just a kind of grim, careful certainty. People do that, he said. The street was dead silent. Even the barber pole seemed to have stopped turning. Victoria Sterling stood very still and felt for the first time in a very long time that she was standing on ground that was not solid. Because the thing was, and she would not admit this for hours yet, not until she was alone, the thing was that some small, cold, careful part of her had already wondered. The deal was too important. The timing was too perfect. The car had died at 2:14 on the one day in 4 years it absolutely could not afford to. And 3 certified teams had told her it was nobody's fault. Which is exactly what you'd want them to think if it was somebody's. Marcus, she said. Yeah. Who signed the prototype out of the facility last night? Marcus was already scrolling, and she watched his face change as he found it watched the color drain out of him, the way it does when a man realizes a thing he is not ready to realize. Victoria, he said. He didn't call her Victoria. In 11 years, he had never once called her Victoria. Who, Marcus? But before he could answer, Logan held up his hand again, that same quiet, certain gesture, and crouched back down into the footwell, and said in a voice that had gone soft and almost wondering, Hold on now. What? Hold on, hold on. His hands were moving fast now, sure tracing following something she couldn't see. Somebody didn't just turn off the lights. Somebody tried to burn the wiring on the way out. Look at no, you can't see it from there. He glanced up at her, and there was something almost like an apology in it, almost like sympathy, which from a stranger should have insulted her, and instead made her throat tight. Ma'am, whoever did this, they didn't just want your car to die today. Then what did they want? Logan looked at the dead, dark, brilliant machine that her whole life's work was riding on, and then he looked back up at her. They wanted to make real sure, he said, that nobody could ever bring it back. And then his hand found something deep up under the dash, and he stopped talking entirely, and his face, his tired, kind, grease-streaked face, did something she would remember for the rest of her life. It changed, slowly. The way a man's face changes when he opens a door, he expected to be empty and find someone standing on the other side. Mr. Carter. He didn't answer. Logan, what is it? He drew his hand back out, and in it, pinched between 2 fingers, was a small black rectangle, no bigger than a stick of gum, with a single green light on its edge that was very faintly still blinking. He held it up to the fading light. This, Logan Carter said quietly, ain't part of your car. Orchestrated 4,000-word narrative continuation, with dialogue-driven storytelling. Orchestrated 4,000-word narrative continuation with dialogue-driven storytelling. For a long moment, nobody said anything at all. The little black rectangle sat there in Logan's fingers, that green light, blinking slow and patient, and Victoria stared at it like it might bite her. What is that? She said. I was hoping you'd tell me. I've never seen it before in my life. No, Logan said. I don't expect you have. That's the point of it. He turned it over careful like a man handling something that might still be live. Whoever put this in your car, ma'am, they didn't want you seeing it. They tucked it way up in behind the harness, where a man'd have to know to go looking. 3 teams crawled all over this thing today, and not one of them found it, and you know why? Tell me. Because they were looking for what broke. Nobody looks for what's been added. He held it up a little higher. This little fella's still got juice in it. See that light? It's talking to something. Or it was right up till you hauled the car into the middle of town where it couldn't talk anymore. Marcus stepped in close, phone forgotten in his hand. You think it's a transmitter? I think it's a leash, Logan said. I think somebody had this car on a string, and when the string got pulled, the car laid down and died right on schedule. He looked up at Victoria. What time'd you say it quit again? 2:14. And what were you doing at 2:14? Where were you headed exactly? She didn't answer right away. Marcus did it for her quiet. We were 40 miles out from the Halloran demonstration site. We'd have made it with 3 hours to spare. So it didn't die when you started out this morning. Didn't die last night in the lot. Didn't die anyplace it'd be easy to fix or easy to explain. Logan nodded slowly. It died exactly far enough from where you were going that you couldn't walk it in, and exactly close enough to a real town that you'd burn your whole afternoon trying to get help instead of giving up and calling somebody smarter. Whoever built this knew your route, knew your timeline, knew right down to the minute where the worst possible place for you to break down would be. The cold that had started at the back of Victoria's neck spread all the way down her spine. That's not possible, she said, but it came out thin. Why not? Because the only people who knew that route... She stopped. Go on. The only people who knew that route are people I trust. Logan looked at her, and there was no cruelty in it. None at all. Just a kind of tired knowledge like a man who'd watched this exact thing happen to people before, on a smaller scale with smaller cars and smaller hearts. Ma'am, he said gently, I hate to be the one, but the only people who can do a thing like this are people you trust. Strangers don't get this close. Strangers don't know your route to the minute. This here was done by somebody you'd hand your keys to without thinking twice. He set the little black device down on the seat beside the crooked connector, lining them up like evidence, which is exactly what they were now. Somebody you already handed them to. Marcus. Her voice had gone flat and dangerous. The sign-out sheet. Who pulled this car from the facility last night? Marcus had been holding that name in his hand for 2 minutes now, and she could see he didn't want to say it, and that more than anything told her she already knew. Marcus. It's authorized under executive clearance, he said. Whose executive clearance? He looked at her, and what was in his face wasn't fear of her for once. It was sorrow. Daniel, he said. The street seemed to tilt. Daniel Reyes, her chief strategy officer. The man who'd been at her side for 9 years, since back when Sterling Dynamics was 3 floors and a prayer, and her father's name still hung heavier than her own. Daniel, who'd talked her off the ledge the night the first prototype caught fire. Daniel, who knew which board members to call and which to let stew. Daniel, who'd raised a glass to her 4 nights ago in her own office and said, "This is the one, Vic. This is the one that finally puts your name above his." Daniel, who had a key to her house and a standing invitation to her mother's Thanksgiving, and who she would have until 11 seconds ago described as the one person on the earth she did not have to watch. No, she said. Victoria. No. Daniel signed it out because Daniel was making sure it got transported correctly. That's a logistics function. He does that. He's careful. He's always careful. That's the point of him. It logged at 11:40 last night, Marcus said quietly. He was in the facility alone for 51 minutes. The transport crew didn't arrive until 12:31. That doesn't mean. He told you he was at home last night. You texted him at midnight about the briefing, and he said you were keeping a man from his bed. She remembered the text. Have mercy, Vic, some of us sleep. She'd laughed at it. Sitting in her kitchen at midnight, she had laughed. Logan had gone quiet during all this, just listening, the way he'd listened to the dead car, and now he spoke up careful like a man stepping onto thin ice he'd rather not be on. "I don't know you're Daniel," he said. "Could be there's 100 reasons a man's in a building for 51 minutes. But that little box didn't grow there. And whoever put it there did it after the engineers signed off and before the transport crew showed up. That's a real narrow window. Somebody had to know it existed." "You're certain about the timing, the window." "I'm certain about what's in my hand," Logan said. "The rest is your business and your people. I just fix cars." He paused. "But I'll tell you something for free, ma'am. A man who'd do this, and it's a lot of work, this hours of it. Careful work, the kind a man's got to really want to do. That's not a man who lost his nerve or made a mistake. That's a man who decided. Sat down and decided to do this to you, and then went home and slept on it, and then texted you a joke about going to bed." He shook his head slowly. "That kind of cold takes practice. He's done you wrong before this. This is just the first time you caught him." It landed like a fist, because she had wondered, hadn't she? 3 months ago, the Voss account had collapsed for reasons nobody could quite name, and Daniel had handled it so smoothly so quickly before she'd even fully understood what happened. And the leak to the trade press in the spring, the one about the battery delays, the one they'd never traced. And the way the rival firm Callaway Industrial always seemed to bid just a hair under them, just close enough, just often enough. She had filed every one of those away as bad luck and bad timing and the ordinary friction of a hard business. Standing in the middle of Caldwell Falls, Ohio, with a dead car and a single father holding a transmitter the size of a stick of gum, she understood that she had been filing them away because Daniel had been the one handing them to her. "I'm going to be sick," she said very quietly to no one. Marcus put a hand near her elbow, not quite touching. "Vic, don't." She straightened. The straightening was an act of will, and Logan watched her do it, and something in his face shifted. Not pity now, but something closer to respect, the grudging kind, the kind he probably didn't hand out easy. "Don't touch me. I'm fine. I am fine." She wasn't, but saying it was how she'd survived 41 years, and she wasn't going to stop now in front of strangers. "Mr. Carter." "Ma'am." "Can you fix it?" Logan looked back at the car. The little girl Emma had drifted up beside him at some point during all this, and she was looking at the dead machine with her father's exact expression, and he put a hand on the top of her head without seeming to think about it. "Honest answer." "Always." "I don't know." "That's not the answer I need. It's the one you got." He crouched down again, peering up into the dash. "Here's the thing. He didn't just shut it off. If he'd just shut it off, I'd have you running in 20 minutes. But that's not what he did. He shut it off, and then he tried to scramble its brains on the way out so nobody could ever switch it back on. Burned the connections. Wiped what he could wipe. Whoever did this knew the car was gonna get looked at by smart people, and he wanted those smart people to look and finally throw up their hands and say exactly what they said. Beyond repair. 3 times. He engineered those 3 answers, ma'am. They were his real product today. Not the dead car. The 3 men telling you to give up. But you don't think it's beyond repair. I think, Logan said slowly, that a man can't burn down what he doesn't fully understand. And this car's too new for anybody to fully understand. Including him. Including, I'd guess, your own engineers. He reached up, traced something, his lips moving slightly, like a man doing sums in his head. He cut the main lines because he figured the main lines were everything. But a car like this, it's got backups for its backups. Redundancies. There's a whole second nervous system in here that I don't think he even knew about, because it's the kind of thing the software boys build in and don't tell the suits about. If I can find it. If it's still alive. If I can talk to it without the security lockout slamming the door on me. He blew out a breath. That's 3 ifs, ma'am. I don't sell ifs. But you asked me honest, and that's the honest. How long? To find out if it's even possible. Couple hours. To actually do it, if it's possible at all. I don't know. Past dark. Maybe a lot past. Marcus checked his watch. The demonstration's at 9 tomorrow morning. We've got... He did the math and his face fell. We've got about 17 hours, and the site's still 90 minutes out from here, plus setup, plus... Then we don't have a lot of room to stand around talking about it, Logan said, and he said it mild, but he reached over to a rolling toolbox. Somebody from the crowd had quietly wheeled out of his shop and across the street while nobody was watching, and the gesture was so matter-of-fact, so settled, that Victoria understood the man had already decided to try long before he'd said a word about it. Mr. Carter, ma'am, I'm going to be straight with you. The longer we talk, the less I work and the clock. Why? He stopped. Why what? Why are you helping me? She heard how it came out suspicious hard, the only register she had left at the end of the worst afternoon of her career, and she didn't soften it because she'd learned a long time ago that softening things got you hurt. You don't know me. I was rude to you. I told you not to put your hands on my car. You've got a little girl standing right there and a shop to run, and you're about to spend your whole evening, maybe your whole night, on a stranger's problem that 3 paid professionals already quit on. So why? The crowd had gone quiet again, even the old men. Logan straightened up, wiped his hands on the towel hanging from his back pocket, and he looked at her for a good while before he answered long enough that it got uncomfortable, long enough that she almost took the question back. You really want to know? I asked. My daddy ran this shop before me, Logan said, and his daddy before him. 60-some years that sign's been up. And there was a stretch when I was about Emma's age where we damn near lost it. Bank was gonna take it. Whole town knew. And you know what saved us. What? A fella came through, truck driver. Broke down right about where you're standing. Nobody else in town would touch his rig because he was passing through and he couldn't pay much, and it was a holiday weekend and everybody had some place to be. My daddy fixed it anyway, stayed up all night. Charged him about half what it was worth. And that trucker turned out he ran freight for half the county, and he sent every busted truck he knew about to us for the next 15 years. Logan almost smiled. Saved the shop. Saved my whole life probably, 'cause I don't know what kind of man I'd be if I'd grown up someplace other than here. That's a nice story, Victoria said. It doesn't answer my question. Sure it does. You just don't like the answer. He picked up a flashlight, clicked it on, clicked it off, testing it. My daddy didn't fix that truck because the man could pay. He fixed it because the man was stuck and my daddy could unstick him. And where he came from, that was the beginning and the end of the conversation. You're stuck, ma'am. I can probably unstick you. Everything else, whether you were rude, whether you're rich, whether you'll ever so much as remember my name by Christmas, that's all just noise. I don't fix cars for the kind of person who owns them. I fix cars because they're broke, and I'm not. He clicked the flashlight on one more time and left it on. Now, you gonna let me work, or you gonna keep asking me why a man be decent to you? Like that's the strangest thing you ever heard. And the awful thing. The thing that sat in Victoria's chest like a swallowed stone was that it was the strangest thing she'd heard in years. She thought about Daniel raising a glass in her office. This is the one, Vic. She thought about every executive who'd ever told her they were on her side and meant, I'm on the side of wherever you're winning. She thought about an entire adult life spent in rooms where decency always had a price tag, where nobody crossed a street for you unless they'd already calculated what the crossing was worth. And here was a man in a flannel shirt with a kid and a shop and a 60-year-old sign, offering to give her his whole night for nothing and getting impatient with her for not understanding it. Work, she said. Her voice cracked on the word, and she hated it, and she said it again anyway. Please, work. Yes, ma'am. He turned to the car, then stopped, turned back. One thing. Anything. That Daniel of yours. Logan's voice dropped low just for her. You're gonna want to call him, right now. Tell him the car's broke, you're stuck. It's a disaster, you don't know what you're gonna do. You're gonna want to hear him be sorry about it, 'cause you need one thing today to still be true, and he's the thing you've been counting on being true the longest. He paused. Don't. Why not? Because if I'm right and that box in your car says I'm right, then the second you tell him you're stuck, he's gonna know his plan worked. And a man whose plan is working gets careless. But a man who thinks his plan failed. Logan let that hang. If you can get this car running and roll it onto that stage tomorrow morning, and he's standing there in the crowd watching it happen, watching the thing he killed come back to life right in front of God and everybody, ma'am, that's the moment his face is going to tell you everything. Cars lie. People fix what cars say. But a man's face when he sees a ghost, that's the one thing in this world nobody's figured out how to fake. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "You're not just a mechanic," she said quietly. "I'm exactly a mechanic," Logan said. "I just been doing it long enough to know that the hardest thing to fix in any machine is the person who built the problem. And those I don't touch. Those are yours to handle." He nodded at the phone in her hand. "So don't call him. Let him sleep good tonight. Let him think he won." She looked down at the phone. Daniel's name was right there in her recent calls, 3 from the top between her mother and the Halloran General Counsel. Her thumb hovered over it. Then she put the phone in her pocket. "Marcus," she said, "cancel the calls, all of them. As far as anyone at Sterling knows, the prototype is stranded. I'm furious, and we're going to miss the demonstration. Let that be the story. Let that be the story Daniel hears. Vic, if this doesn't work, that story becomes true, and we walk into tomorrow with no prototype and no plan B, and aboard that. Then it had better work." She turned to Logan. "Won't it?" Logan was already half under the dash. "I'll know more in 2 hours," came his voice muffled. "Emma, hand me the small light, not the big one, the small one. Thank you, baby." A clink of tools. "Ma'am, you might want to sit down. This is gonna be a long night, and you standing over my shoulder vibrating like a tuning fork isn't gonna make it go faster." "I don't sit." "Today you might." The old man with the apple face. His name, she'd learn later, was Earl, and he'd been coming to Carter and daughter for 40 years, since back when it was just Carter produced a folding camp chair from somewhere and set it up on the sidewalk and patted the back of it. "He's gonna be at it a while, ma'am," Earl said kindly. "Logan don't quit. Watched him spend 2 days on a man's tractor once, 'cause the man cried when he thought he'd lost it. 2 days for a hay tractor. He'll be at your car till it runs, or till the sun comes up, whichever's first, and there ain't a thing on God's earth you can say to make him go faster, so you might as well take the chair." She looked at the chair. She looked at the diner across the way, lit up yellow now, against the falling dark, and the barbershop and the hardware store, and the little crowd of patient old men who hadn't gone home, who were settling in like they meant to see this through. Like a dead stranger's prototype was the most interesting thing to happen in Caldwell Falls in a decade, which it almost certainly was. She sat down in Earl's chair. She, Victoria Sterling, who had a corner office with a view of 3 states and a name, finally about to climb above her father's, sat down in a borrowed camp chair on a cracked sidewalk in a town she'd never meant to stop in, and watched a single father she'd insulted an hour ago bend his whole self over the wreck of her life's work. "Mr. Carter," she said after a while. If you fix this car." She stopped. Started over, and her voice was not the boardroom voice now, it was just a voice. "When you fix this car, I want you to know I'll never forget it. Whatever you ask of me, whatever it's worth to you, you name it, and it's yours." There was a pause from under the dash. Then a soft sound that might have been a laugh. "Ma'am," Logan said. "I appreciate that, I do. But you got it backwards, and you're gonna keep getting it backwards till somebody tells you straight, so I'll tell you straight." His hand came out from under the dash and gestured loose at the dark and the town and the old men and the lit-up diner, all of it. "There's nothing you got that I want. I got a shop. I got that little girl right there who is the whole entire reason the sun comes up. I got a town full of folks who'd put me up and feed me if my place burned down tonight. I'm not fixing your car to get something off you. That's the part you can't seem to wrap your head around, and I think that's the saddest thing about you, if you don't mind my saying." "I do mind." "Figured you would." His hand disappeared back under the dash. "I'm fixing it because somebody did you wrong, and I can make a little piece of it right, and that's enough. That's the whole reason. There's no second part." A clink, a grunt, a long quiet. Then softer. But if you want to do something when this is over, name it. Go be that kind of decent to somebody who can't pay you back. Pass it on down the road like that trucker did for my daddy. That's the only currency I take." He shifted, and there was a new sound now, a faint electronic chirp from somewhere deep in the machine, and the green light on the little black box on the seat flickered and went dark, and Logan said very quietly, in a completely different voice, "Well, hello." Victoria sat up straight. "What? What is it?" "Found it," Logan breathed. "The second nervous system. The thing he didn't know about. It's still alive in there. Faint as a whisper, but it's alive." His voice was full of wonder, the pure mechanical joy of a man who'd just heard a heart he thought was stopped give one small beat. "Lord, look at that, look at that. He missed it. Mr. Whoever you are, you cold son of a gun, you missed one thing. Can you bring it back?" There was a long, long silence from under the dash. "Ask me at sunrise," Logan said. And then he went to work, and the night came down over Caldwell Falls, and the diner glowed, and the old men waited, and a little girl handed her father one tool after another in the dark, and Victoria Sterling sat in a borrowed chair with her dead phone full of unmade calls and watched the only honest man she'd met in 10 years try to raise the dead. Sunrise was still 6 hours off. And somewhere in the second of those hours, Logan stopped talking altogether. Victoria noticed because she'd grown used to the running murmur of him. The hand me that the easy, now the half-sentences he muttered to the car like it was a spooked horse. Then it all just stopped, and the silence from under the dash got long enough that she leaned forward in Earl's camp chair. "Mr. Carter." "Nothing." "Logan, I hear you." His voice came back flat and far away, the voice of a man whose whole mind was somewhere she couldn't follow. "I'm just thinking." "You've been thinking for 20 minutes. Then it's a hard problem." A pause. Ma'am, I'm gonna tell you something and you're not gonna like it." Her stomach dropped. "You can't do it." "I didn't say that. I said you're not gonna like it." He slid out from under the dash and sat up on the pavement, his back against the open door, and wiped his face with the back of his wrist, leaving a fresh streak of grease across his forehead. He looked older than he had at sundown. "I can wake the second system up. I'm pretty sure of that now. But waking it up and getting your car to run off it, those are two different animals. It's like you ever have somebody in a coma." The question caught her sideways. "My father," she said before she'd decided to. "At the end, 11 days. Logan went quiet a beat. "Then you know," he said gentler. "You can have a heartbeat and still not have the person. The lights can be on and nobody answering the door. That's where I'm at. I got a heartbeat in there. I got the second system blinking away, alive, willing. But the main brain, the part that tells the wheels to turn and the doors to lock and the screen to light up, your Daniel scrambled that good. Burned the bridges between the backup and the body. So I got a live brain over here and a working body over there and no road between them. So build the road. That's the part you're not gonna like." He looked up at her. "I can't build your road. I don't have the parts, and I don't have the codes, and even if I did, that security lockout you warned me about is sitting right there in the dark, like a dog waiting for somebody to step wrong. One bad move and the whole thing slams shut, and not even your factory key brings it back. I push too hard, I lose her for good." He let that sit. "But there's a man who could tell me how the bridges were built in the first place. And if I knew how they were built, I could maybe fake one. Jury rig it. Ugly, but enough to drive." Which man? Whoever designed the redundant system, the one Daniel didn't know about. One of your software boys. Logan held up the small black device dead, now its green light long extinguished. "Somebody on your team built a whole second nervous system into this car and didn't tell the suits. That's a particular kind of person, ma'am. That's somebody careful. Somebody who figured someday somebody'd come along and try exactly what got tried tonight." He almost smiled. "You don't build a secret backup unless some part of you's already scared of the people you work with. I'd like to talk to the person who was scared." Victoria sat very still, because she knew exactly who he meant. She knew before Logan finished the sentence. There was only one engineer on the prototype team who built like that, paranoid, layered, always 2 moves past what the spec required, always quietly muttering about what happens when, not if. A young woman named Priya Anand, who Daniel had tried to have reassigned off the prototype project 4 months ago, citing culture fit, a request Victoria had granted without a second thought, because Daniel handled personnel, and Daniel was always right about people. Daniel had tried to get the one engineer paranoid enough to hide a backup off the project. Of course he had. "Marcus," she said. He'd been dozing against the side of the diner. He came awake instantly, the way assistants learn to. "Priya Anand. Get her on the phone. I don't care what time it is." "Priya's not Vic." Daniel moved her to the Phoenix office in February. "She's not even on the prototype. She built a secret backup into my prototype, Marcus. She's more on it than anyone alive. Get her." It took 11 minutes and 3 calls, and when Priya Anand's voice finally came through the phone, thick with sleep and 3 time zones of confusion, the first thing she said when Victoria explained where they were and what they'd found was a long silence, and then, in a small voice, "You found it. Oh my God. Somebody finally, you actually found it. You knew this would happen," Victoria said. "I didn't know what would happen. I just knew something would." A shaky breath down the line. "Ms. Sterling, I tried to tell you. Last fall. I came to your office twice, and both times Daniel said you were in meetings and he'd pass it along, and I built the backup because I didn't trust—" She stopped. "I didn't trust the chain of custody. That's all I'll say on a phone. I didn't trust who had access. So I built a system that doesn't answer to executive clearance. It answers to me, only me." Logan, who'd been listening with his ear close to the phone, spoke up. "Ma'am, Miss Anand, Logan Carr. I'm the mechanic. I got your second system breathing, but I can't bridge it to the main body. The bridges are burned. You build a way to do that on purpose." "A back door. Tell me you built a back door." Another silence. Then slowly, with the wonder of someone meeting a stranger who already knows their secret. "Who are you?" "I'm just a fellow with a flashlight and your car, miss. You build a back door or not?" "I built a back door." "Atta girl." Logan breathed, and something in Victoria's chest cracked clean open at the sheer relief in it. "Tell me where it lives." And then began the longest hour of the night. The two of them, a software engineer in a Phoenix bedroom, and a small-town mechanic on a cracked Ohio sidewalk, building a road between a dead car's body and its hidden beating heart, one instruction at a time. Priya talked Logan through it in a language Victoria half understood. Trace the violet line to the splice. No, the other splice, the one wrapped in heat shrink, because I knew somebody might cut the others. Logan's hands moved in the dark. Emma, who should have been asleep hours ago, who Logan had told 3 times to go lie down in the shop, and who 3 times had refused, held the flashlight steady on his work with the absolute concentration of a child who has decided this is the most important night of her life. She built it to be found. Logan murmured at one point, almost to himself, threading a wire he could barely see. "Wrap the real one in pink heat shrink." Pink. Knew a saboteur'd cut the ones that looked important and leave the silly-looking one alone. Lord, this girl thinks like a fox. "She tried to warn me," Victoria said quietly. "Twice, and I didn't even hear about it." "Because somebody made sure you didn't." "Yes." Logan was quiet a moment, working. "You're gonna have to look at that," he said. "All of it. Not tonight, but soon. How many times somebody tried to reach you and the message never got to you because the same man was standing in the door taking your mail?" He pulled the wire taut. "Man builds a wall around you, tells you it's to protect you. Then one day you look up and you realize the wall wasn't keeping the world out. It was keeping you from seeing the world. A clip, a connection. Priya, that's it. That's the splice. What now?" "Now the hard part," came Priya's voice. "Now you wake the bridge, and either the car accepts the backup as legitimate, or the lockout decides you're an intruder and bricks itself permanently. There's no third outcome. And I won't lie to you, I tested this exactly once in simulation 8 months ago, and then Daniel had me moved before I could test it for real." The street went silent. Earl, who'd been awake again for an hour, took his cap off without seeming to know he was doing it. The handful of old men who'd outlasted the night drew a little closer. "What are the odds?" Victoria heard herself ask. "In simulation it worked," Priya said. "In simulation." "That's not odds." "It's all I've got, Ms. Sterling. I'm sorry." Logan sat back on his heels. He looked at the car. He looked at his daughter holding the light. He looked last at Victoria, sitting forward now on the very edge of Earl's camp chair, with her hands knotted together in her lap, and he said, "It's your car, ma'am. Your call. I push this button. It's heaven, or it's the grave, and there's no in-between and no takebacks. We can sit here till sunrise being scared of it, or we can find out. But I'm not the one who gets to choose. You are." And Victoria Sterling, who had made 1,000 decisions worth 1,000 fortunes, who had bet the company on the prototype, and bet her name on the company, and bet her whole self on never ever being the woman people expected her to be. Victoria Sterling looked at a mechanic she'd known for 11 hours and trusted more than men she'd known for a decade, and she said, "Do it." "You sure?" "Push the button, Logan." He reached up under the dash. His hand found something. Emma leaned in with the light, and he looked back over his shoulder one more time, not at Victoria now, but at his daughter, and he said soft, "Watch this baby. Whatever happens, you watch. 'Cause your daddy's about to either look real smart or real dumb, and either way, it's worth seeing." Emma giggled even at that hour, even that scared. "Do it, Daddy." He did it. For 1 second, nothing. For 2 seconds, nothing. And in the third second, Victoria heard a sound she would hear in her dreams for the rest of her life. A soft electronic chime, the exact chime, the prototype made when it woke the chime. She'd heard 1,000 times in the test bay, and had honestly thought she'd never hear again. And then the dashboard bloomed to life, all at once, screen after screen, lighting blue and white in the dark. The headlights flaring on the whole machine, drawing one enormous breath and holding it. And somewhere deep in the chassis a fan spun up and the car hummed alive awake back. Nobody said anything. Nobody breathed. And then Earl, 81 years old, who'd been coming to Carter and daughter since before Logan was born, let out a whoop that probably woke half of Caldwell Falls, and the old men were hollering, and somebody was banging on the diner window, and the cook came running out in his apron, and Emma launched herself at her father, and Logan caught her, and stood up holding her with the dashboard glowing behind them both, and over the top of his daughter's head, he looked at Victoria. He didn't say "I told you so." He didn't say anything. He just nodded once, like a man closing a deal, like a man who'd unstuck somebody and considered the conversation as promised over. Victoria stood up out of the camp chair. Her legs didn't quite hold her, and Marcus caught her elbow, and this time she let him. She walked to the car, her car breathing, now glowing, now alive now, and she put her hand flat on the warm hood, and she felt the hum of it travel up through her palm and into her arm and into a place in her chest that had been frozen solid since the moment Marcus said the name Daniel. And the ice in that place broke all at once and came up her throat as something she absolutely refused to let be tears. "It's running," she said, stupidly, uselessly. "It's actually running. For now," Logan said, setting Emma down. "And I want to be real clear about for now, ma'am, 'cause this is the part where everybody gets excited and stops listening." He waited until she was looking at him. "I jury-rigged a bridge that a girl in Phoenix designed in her head at 3 in the morning and tested one time in pretend. It'll hold. I think it'll hold. But it is held together with a back door and a prayer, and it has got to get you 90 minutes down the road set up. Sit there, however long these things take, and then drive itself across a stage in front of the people you're trying to impress. That's a lot of asking. So between here and there you baby it. You don't push it. And the second it gets where it's going, you get your Priya on a plane to come look at it proper, because what I built will get you to the church, but it will not get you home from the wedding." "Understood." "I mean it." "I understand, Logan." He studied her a second, then nodded satisfied. And then his face did something else, something tired, and a little troubled, and he glanced at the lightning edge of the sky, the first gray of it, and he said lower just for her, "There's the other thing." What other thing? You're Daniel. He wiped his hands. He's gonna walk into that demonstration this morning expecting to watch you fail. He killed this car with his own 2 hands. He knows for a fact it's dead. There's no version of his morning where this car shows up working because he made sure of it. So when it rolls out onto that stage, Logan shook his head slowly. I told you last night his face'd tell you everything. I stand by that. But ma'am, you got to understand what kind of man you're about to corner. A man who'd do this careful, this cold. When he sees the thing he killed, get up and walk. He's not just gonna be surprised. He's gonna be afraid. And scared men do stupid things fast, and you're gonna be standing right next to him when he figures out the game's up. You think I think I don't know him, and you do. And I think you've been wrong about him for 9 years, so I wouldn't trust either one of our guesses about what he'd do. Logan's jaw set. I'm just saying, don't go into that room thinking the hard part's over because the car runs. The car was the easy part. The car's just a machine. It only ever did what it was built to do. He looked at her steadily. The hard part's the man. It's always the man. And you can't fix that one with a back door and a prayer. That one you got to face down to its face. Victoria looked at the car glowing and humming and impossibly alive. Then she looked east toward the gray, toward the 90 miles of road, and the stage at the end of it, and the man who would be standing in the crowd smiling, sure he'd won. Then I'll face it, she said. It won't be clean. Nothing about this has been clean. Logan almost smiled at that. No, he said. I don't suppose it has. He turned to gather his tools, and Emma was already gathering them with him, the two of them moving in the easy, wordless rhythm of people who'd done this 100 times, and over his shoulder he added, I'll come. Victoria turned. What? To your demonstration, if you'll have me. He coiled a cable, not looking at her. Somebody's got to babysit that bridge if it gets cranky on the road, and that somebody's me, 'cause I'm the only one alive who's laid eyes on it. And besides... He glanced up, and there was something flinty in it now, something that hadn't been there before. I've been listening to you talk about this Daniel all night, and I find I'd like to see his face myself when the dead car drives. He hefted his toolbox. Man does a thing like this, I'd like to be in the room. Just to know what kind of fellas out there in the world, walking around in a suit doing this to people and texting jokes about going to bed. The sky in the east had gone from gray to the faintest, palest gold. Get your daughter home first, Victoria said. Or bring her. Bring whoever you want. Bring the whole town. But Logan... Her voice caught, and for once she let it. Thank you. I know you don't want to hear it. I know you've got your whole speech about how you don't do it for thanks. But you gave me my whole life back tonight, and you're going to have to let me say thank you, whether it fits in your philosophy or not. Logan stopped, set the toolbox down, and he looked at her for a long moment in the gold and gray light with his exhausted daughter leaning against his leg, and something in his face softened all the way down. You're welcome, ma'am, he said simply. There, was that so hard? And despite the night, despite the betrayal, despite the 90 miles, and the man waiting at the end of them. Victoria Sterling laughed a real laugh, surprised out of her the first one in longer than she could remember. Yeah, she said. Actually, it was. Well. Logan picked the toolbox back up. Then you got something to practice. He nodded toward the humming car, toward the brightening road, toward the morning that was coming, whether anybody was ready for it or not. Come on, let's go show a dead man his ghost. The car made it the whole 90 miles. Logan rode in the back, the entire way with a laptop balanced on his knees that Priya had walked him through setting up. Watching the bridge, the way a man watches a sick animal through the night, and twice he leaned forward and said, Ease off, ma'am, she's getting warm. And twice Victoria's driver eased off, and the second time Logan muttered, There she goes, settle down now, settle down, to the car, like it could hear him, and maybe it could because it settled. Emma slept the whole way with her head against her father's arm. They came over the last rise around 8:30, and the Halloran demonstration site spread out below them, a low-glass conference center, a paved lot, already filling with the kind of cars that cost more than houses, a stage set up under a white tent with rows of chairs facing it, and a long banner that read, Sterling Dynamics, in letters. Victoria had personally chosen the font of 8 months ago, back when she'd thought the worst thing that could happen today was bad weather. There it is, Marcus said quietly. There it is. Victoria turned in her seat. Logan, the bridge. Holding. He didn't look up from the laptop. Holding for now. You get her parked behind that tent, and you let her cool, and you do not so much as breathe on her till it's showtime. You hear. I hear. And one more time, 'cause I know how people are when they get excited. Baby it, don't push it, get Priya on a plane. I heard you, Logan. I've heard you all night. Good. Now he looked up. The exhaustion sat heavy on him, gray under the eyes, but underneath it was something alert and hard. Then let's talk about the part you can't jury-rig. He nodded out the window at the gathering crowd. He down there. Victoria scanned the lot, and then she saw him, and her whole body went cold and still at once. Daniel Reyes, standing near the front of the tent, in a charcoal suit she'd seen 100 times, a coffee in one hand, laughing at something one of the Halloran people had said. Relaxed. Easy. At home in his own skin, the way he always was, the way that had always made her feel steadier, just to be near. He looked for all the world like a man who'd slept 8 clean hours and arrived early to support his boss on the biggest day of her career. That's him, she said. Gray suit, coffee, by the front row. Logan looked a long moment. The one laughing. The one laughing. Huh. Logan's jaw worked. Look at him. Looks like he belongs there more than you do. He shook his head slowly. That's the tell, ma'am, right there. The ones who do the worst things are almost always the most comfortable in the room. Guilt makes a man fidget. He's not fidgeting, he's holding court. He closed the laptop. He thinks the only thing arriving today is your bad news. He's down there practicing his sad face for when you tell him. What do I do? You don't do anything different than you planned. That's the whole game. Logan handed the laptop to Marcus and gathered Emma gently against him, the girl stirring, blinking awake. You walk down there like a woman who's about to lose everything. You let him be sorry for you. You let him put a hand on your shoulder and tell you it's not your fault and you'll bounce back. Let him have all of it. Every word. Because every kind thing that comes out of that man's mouth in the next half hour is going to be a knife you get to hand right back to him the second that car rolls out. He met her eyes. Can you do that? Can you stand there and let the man who tried to ruin you comfort you, and smile and say thank you, Daniel, and mean none of it? Victoria thought about it, really thought about it. I've been doing exactly that for 9 years, she said. I just didn't know it. This time I'll know. Something flickered across Logan's face, respect, and under it something almost like sorrow for her. Yeah, he said. I expect you will. He nudged the door open. Go on. Park your car, let her cool, then go down there and break that man's whole morning slow. I'll be at the back of the tent with my girl. You won't have to look for me, but I'll be watching him. And the second that car wakes up on that stage, I'll have my eyes nowhere but his face, and after I'll tell you everything I saw, everything he didn't know he was showing. And that is exactly how it went. Victoria parked the prototype behind the tent and let it cool and told the 2 technicians she trusted, not the Halloran crew, her own people hand-picked at 4 that morning, by text to guard it and touch nothing. Then she walked down into the crowd, looking like a woman at a funeral, which was not hard because she'd had no sleep and a great deal of betrayal, and the funeral feeling was right there waiting to be used. Daniel saw her coming, and his whole face rearranged itself into concern. Vic. He set his coffee down on a chair and came toward her with both hands out, and God help her. It was good, it was convincing. There was nothing in his eyes but warmth and worry. And she understood with a sick lurch how she'd missed it for 9 years, because there was nothing to see. The man was simply better at it than the truth was. Vic, what happened? I've been calling. Marcus said the car went down. Is it? Please tell me it's not. It's bad, Daniel, she said, and let her voice do exactly what it wanted to do, which was crack. It's really bad. Oh, Vic. And his arms came around her, and he held her, and over his shoulder she could see the back of the white tent, where a tall man in a flannel shirt stood with a little girl watching, and she held her oldest friend's betrayal against her chest, and looked at the only honest man in 300 miles, and did not cry, because crying was the one thing she would not give Daniel Reyes. Not today, not ever again. It's going to be okay, Daniel was saying into her hair. Listen to me. We'll reschedule. Halloran will understand these things happen, prototypes fail. That's what they're for. We'll spin it. Sterling Dynamics caught a flaw before delivery. Diligence. Integrity. We turn it into a strength. He pulled back, hands on her shoulders, eyes earnest. You did not fail today, Vic. The car failed, not you. Don't you dare carry this. You always know what to say, she said, and meant it as the knife it was, and watched it slide in disguised as gratitude. That's my job. He smiled. Somebody's got to keep your head on straight. Lord knows you won't do it yourself. He glanced toward the stage. You want me to go tell Halloran? Soften it, I can have them out of here in 10 minutes, thinking it was their idea to reschedule. Just say the word and I'll handle it. I'll handle all of it. You don't have to do a thing. And there it was, the offer to make the bad news disappear before anyone official could examine it too closely. The offer to manage the room, to control the story, to be the only narrator. Let me handle it. 9 years of let me handle it, and she'd thought it was loyalty, and it had been a hand over her mouth the whole time. No, she said. He blinked. No, I want to do it myself. I owe Halloran that much, face to face. She made herself smile, small and broken. But stay close, would you? I don't think I can get through it without you in the room. Always, Daniel said, and something moved behind his eyes. Relief, she thought, the relief of a man being told to stay exactly where he could watch his plan finish. I'm not going anywhere. No, she agreed softly. You're not. She walked away from him before her face could betray her, and she went to find the Halloran principals, and she made small talk about the weather and the drive, and let them believe nothing was wrong, and the whole time the clock crawled toward 9, and the prototype cooled behind the tent, and Logan Carter stood at the back with his daughter watching a man in a gray suit hold court over a crowd that didn't know it was about to watch him die in public. At 3 minutes to 9, the head of Halloran Group, a silver-haired man named Whitfield, who'd built his fortune on never being impressed by anything, took his seat in the front row and looked at his watch, and Victoria felt her own pulse in her throat, and she walked up onto the stage alone. Good morning. Her voice carried out over the crowd, steady, because she'd buried steadier feelings than this. Thank you all for being here. I know some of you traveled a long way. A murmur, polite, waiting. I want to tell you a story before we begin, she said, and she saw Daniel in the second row now tilt his head. This wasn't the script. There was no story in the script, because I think it matters more than the demonstration itself. Yesterday afternoon, this car broke down. Completely. In the middle of a small town in Ohio called Caldwell Falls, 90 miles from this stage. She watched Daniel's face. It hadn't changed yet. He didn't know yet. 3 certified repair teams examined it. All 3 reached the same conclusion. She let the pause stretch. Beyond repair. Now a real murmur went through the crowd. Whitfield's eyebrows rose. Daniel had gone very, very still. They were wrong, Victoria said, and she lifted her hand and gave the signal, and from behind the white tent came the soft electric hum of the prototype, rolling forward under its own power, gleaming black in the morning sun, its headlights bright, its dashboard glowing alive and whole, and back from the dead. And it came around the side of the tent, and onto the ramp, and up onto the stage, and stopped perfectly, exactly on its mark. And the chime sounded, that soft, impossible chime, out over a crowd that erupted into applause. But Victoria Sterling wasn't watching the car. She was watching Daniel Reyes. And so was Logan Carter from the back of the tent, with his eyes nailed to the man's face, and his daughter's hand in his. And what they saw, what they both saw in the same half-second, was the exact thing Logan had promised would come. The applause, the rising crowd, the impossible black car humming on the stage, And in the middle of all of it, one man sitting frozen in the second row, with the color draining out of his face so fast it was like watching water run out of a glass. Daniel's mouth had come open. His eyes were fixed on the car, the way a man stares at something that cannot be there. His coffee hand had started to shake just slightly, just enough. And then this was the part Logan would describe to her later, the part he'd seen, and she'd only half caught his head, turned fast, instinctive, scanning the crowd, looking for someone. Looking for whoever had failed him, whoever was supposed to have made sure this was impossible, and finding no one, and turning back to the car with the drowning horror of a man who has just realized he is the only one in the room who knows why this is a miracle. It can't, Daniel said. It came out of him before he could stop it low, but Victoria was close enough to hear, and so was Whitfield, who turned and looked at him. That car was... He stopped himself. But too late. A beat too late. Was what, Daniel? Victoria said. The whole front of the tent had gone quiet, the applause dying as people sensed something happening that wasn't on any program. That car was what, she said again, and she came down off the stage slow, and she walked toward him, and her voice was no longer cracked, no longer broken, no longer the voice of a woman at a funeral. It was the boardroom voice. It was the voice that had ended careers. Finish the sentence. You were so sure of something just now. You said it can't. You said that car was what? She stopped in front of him. You seem very certain about the condition of a vehicle you haven't been near in days. A vehicle that broke down 90 miles from here in a town you've never been to last night while you were home in bed. Weren't you home in bed, Daniel? Vic. His voice had gone thin. Vic, what is this? What are you? Because the thing is, she said, we found something in the car, tucked up behind the harness where a man would have to know to go looking. A little black transmitter about the size of a stick of gum that doesn't belong to Sterling Dynamics. And we found a connector that had been pulled and put back crooked by somebody in a hurry. And we found that the car didn't fail, Daniel. It was killed, carefully, by somebody with executive access. Somebody who signed it out of the secure facility at 11:40 the night before last, and was alone with it for 51 minutes. Somebody who then texted me a joke about going to bed. The blood was entirely gone from his face now. You can't prove, he started, and then heard himself say. It heard the shape of what he'd just admitted in front of 40 witnesses and the head of Halloran Group, and his mouth closed with an almost audible click. Prove what, Daniel? Victoria said softly. I didn't say it was you. I said it was somebody with executive access. There are 4 people in this company with that access. I never said which one. She tilted her head, and her voice dropped to where only he could hear it, and it was the cruelest, gentle thing she had ever said to anyone. But you knew. The second that car rolled out, you knew it shouldn't be alive, and you knew exactly why, because you're the one who put it to sleep. Your own face told the whole room before I said a single word. I just watched you confess to 40 people without opening your mouth. Whitfield was on his feet now. The Halloran people were murmuring. Somewhere a phone was already out recording. Daniel stood knocking his chair back, and for one wild second, Logan's warning rang in Victoria's ears. Scared men do stupid things fast, and you'll be standing right next to him. And she saw Daniel's eyes dart toward the exit, toward the parking lot, toward escape, and she braced. But it was Logan who moved. He'd crossed half the tent already quiet, unhurried even now. Emma left safe at the back with Earl, who'd insisted on making the drive too, and he stepped into the aisle between Daniel and the exit, not threatening, not squaring up, just there, a tall, tired man in a flannel shirt blocking a path, and he said in a voice as easy as if he were talking about the weather, I wouldn't, friend. Daniel stopped. Who the hell are you? I'm the mechanic. Logan almost smiled. I'm the fella you didn't account for. He let that sit. You did real good work, you know. On the car. Burned the bridges, scrambled the brain. Made 3 smart men say the magic words. It was clean. It was cold. I've been doing this 30 years, and I sat there half the night admiring how clean it was. His voice hardened just slightly, just enough. But you missed one thing. There was a backup in that car you didn't know about, built by somebody, You ran out of the company because she scared you. And she was right to be scared, wasn't she? 'Cause she built the one thing that brought your whole morning down. He took one step closer. So you can run for that parking lot if you want. But there's 40 people here, and a camera, and a man from Halloran, and your own face already told all of them the truth. Running's just gonna be the last clean thing you do today, and it won't even be clean. Sit down, son. It's over. You did it to yourself the second you decided a car was easier to kill than a woman was to beat. For a long moment, Daniel Reyes stood frozen in the aisle, looking at the mechanic, looking at the car, looking at the woman he'd worked beside for 9 years and tried to destroy, and the whole tent held its breath. Then his shoulders came down, and the fight and the lie and the 9 years of let me handle it all went out of him at once, and he was just a man in a gray suit standing in an aisle with nowhere left to go. "Vic," he said, and his voice broke, and now he was the one cracking. He was the one reaching for the funeral feeling. "Vic, you have to understand, Calloway came to me 3 years ago. I was drowning the divorce, the debt, you don't know what they. I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant." "Don't." Victoria's voice cut him clean off. "Don't you dare give me a story now. You had 9 years of mornings to tell me the truth, and you used every one of them to tell me a lie instead." She turned to Marcus, who already had his phone to his ear. "Call our council. Call the Halloran Council. And call the police, Marcus, because what he did isn't just a breach of contract, it's corporate sabotage and theft of proprietary technology. And I am going to make sure he answers for every minute of it." She looked back at Daniel one last time. "You were the smartest person I knew. I trusted you more than my own family. And it turns out the only true thing you ever told me was that somebody had to keep my head on straight." Her voice didn't waver. "It just wasn't ever going to be you." And she turned her back on him, the deepest insult she had, the thing she'd never once done in 9 years. Turn her back, and she walked away up onto the stage to her car, her impossible resurrected humming car, and she put her hand on the warm hood of it in front of the entire crowd, and she faced Whitfield, and the Halloran group, and the cameras, and whatever came next. Behind her, 2 of Whitfield's security men had taken Daniel by the arms, and he wasn't fighting, he was just sagging, deflating a balloon with the air gone out, and Logan Carter stepped back out of the aisle and let them pass, and watched the man he'd cornered get led away into the bright morning, and on his tired face there was no triumph at all. Just a kind of weary, ancient sadness, the look of a man who'd seen the worst thing about people up close one more time and gotten no joy from being right. Emma ran up and grabbed his hand. "Daddy, did the car work? Did we win?" Logan looked down at her, then up at the stage where Victoria Sterling stood with her hand on the living car, squaring her shoulders to do the hardest selling of her life, with no sleep, and a betrayal still cooling in her chest, and doing it anyway, doing it alone, doing it honest for maybe the first time in her career. "Yeah, baby," he said softly. "I think the car worked just fine." He squeezed her hand. "Now let's see what the lady does with it." What the lady did with it became the story people in that industry told for years afterward. She didn't sell the car. That was the thing Whitfield said he never forgot. She stood up on that stage with no sleep, and a friend in handcuffs, and $1 billion contract hanging on the next 10 minutes, and she didn't sell the car at all. "I had a whole presentation prepared," Victoria said to the crowd, and she let the prepared cards drop from her hand onto the stage floor. "Performance figures, projections, the kind of thing you've all heard 100 times. I'm not going to give it to you." A murmur. Whitfield leaned forward. "Because the truth is 12 hours ago this car was dead, and I was ready to come up here and lie to you about why. I was going to tell you we'd found a flaw and caught it early. Diligence. Integrity. It was a good lie. A man I trusted built it for me, and I almost used it." She looked out at them. "But this car isn't running because of Sterling Dynamics. Half my company tried to kill it, and the other half was 400 miles away. This car is running because a mechanic in a town none of you have heard of looked at it for 10 seconds and saw what 3 certified teams missed and then gave up his entire night for free to bring it back. So before I tell you whether you should trust this machine, I'm going to tell you the truth about how it got here, and then you can decide. And she told them. All of it. The dead car, the crooked connector, the little black transmitter still blinking, the single father who crossed the street, the girl in Phoenix who'd built a secret backup because she didn't trust the people she worked for and turned out to be right, the pink heat shrink, the back door, the button that was heaven or the grave, the chime in the dark. When she finished, the tent was dead silent. Then Whitfield stood up, this man who'd built a fortune on never being impressed, and he turned around and looked to the back of the tent, where a tall, tired man in a flannel shirt stood holding a little girl's hand. You, Whitfield said. You're the mechanic. Logan shifted, uncomfortable to be looked at. Yes, sir. 3 certified teams said it was beyond repair. They were looking at the wrong question, sir. It happens. And you fixed it. Me and a girl in Phoenix, and about 100 years of stubborn between us, Logan said. And honestly, sir, the car did most of it. It wanted to live. I just opened the door for it. He almost smiled. Machines are like that. People decide they're dead a lot sooner than the machines do. Whitfield looked at him a long moment. Then he turned back to Victoria, and the whole industry's most unimpressible man said the most impressed thing anyone had ever heard him say. Ms. Sterling, I came here this morning to decide whether your technology was reliable. I'm leaving having decided something I care about a great deal more, which is whether you are. He buttoned his jacket. Any CEO can stand on a stage and sell me a working car. You stood on that stage and told me the truth when a lie would have been easier and nobody would have ever known. That's the only thing I've ever actually been buying in 40 years. The rest is just engineering. He extended his hand. Halloran Group is in. Full terms. And I'd like to meet your mechanic before I leave if he'll allow it. The applause that followed was the kind people remember being part of. But that wasn't the end of it. Endings are never that clean, and this one had a long tail. Daniel Reyes was arrested that afternoon. The transmitter, the sign-out logs, the 51 minutes alone, the recovered system records that Logan and Priya pulled out of the car's resurrected memory. It was all there, and it was all impossible to deny, and the connection to Callaway Industrial unraveled within a week once the federal investigators followed the money. He took a deal in the end. He gave up names. The Voss account, the spring leak, the bids that always came in just under sterlings. All of it had been him for 3 years, exactly as Logan had said that night on the sidewalk. He's done you wrong before this. This is just the first time you caught him. Victoria read the full accounting of it alone in her office one night and didn't cry, but she sat with the lights off for a long time afterward, mourning not the man, but the 9 years she'd spent loving a person who'd never once existed. Priya Anand came back. Victoria flew to Phoenix herself, which she had never done for any employee in her life, and sat across a kitchen table from the engineer. She'd let Daniel run off and said the words she'd been practicing the whole flight. I'm sorry. You tried to warn me twice and I didn't hear it because I'd built my whole company so that a man could stand in my doorway and decide what I got to hear. That was my failure, not yours. Come home. Build whatever you want. And the next time you're scared of someone in my company, you come straight to me and I will believe you the first time. Priya came home. She runs the prototype division now. There are no more secret backups because there's no longer any reason to hide one. And Logan Carter went back to Caldwell Falls. Victoria offered him the world. She meant it too. It wasn't a gesture. She offered him a vice presidency, a salary with more zeros than his shop cleared in a decade, a corner office with a view. The whole machine of corporate prestige laid at his grease-stained feet. She offered it in his own shop, standing among the lifts and the toolboxes, and the 60-year-old sign with Emma doing homework on the counter, and Earl pretending not to listen from the waiting chairs. And Logan turned it down. Ma'am, he said gently. I'm flattered, I am. But you're doing it again. You're trying to thank me by making me into you. He wiped his hands on the towel out of habit. I don't want a corner office. I had a corner office for about 11 hours, sitting in Earl's camp chair, watching the sun come up over your car, and that's about as much corner office as I can take in one lifetime. Earl barked a laugh from the waiting chairs. My whole life is right here. That counter Emma's doing her homework on is the same counter I did mine on. The folks in this town would carry me out of a fire on their backs, and I'd do the same for any one of them. You can't pay me to leave a thing like that. There isn't a number. You'd just be offering me a worse life with a bigger paycheck, and I'm too old and too happy to take that trade. Then tell me what I can do, Victoria said. And there was something almost desperate in it, the frustration of a woman who'd spent her whole life solving things with money, meeting the one problem money couldn't touch. Because I cannot live the rest of my life owing you everything and giving you nothing. I won't. There has to be something. Logan thought about it. Really thought the way he thought about a car head-tilted eyes somewhere far off. All right, he said finally. 2 things. Anything. First, you remember what I told you that night? About the trucker and my daddy, and how the only currency I take is passing it on down the road. He fixed her with that steady look. You got a whole company full of people whose lives you can change with a word. You got the power to be the kind of decent to a stranger that nobody can ever pay you back for. I want you to use it. Not as charity for a tax write-off. As a habit. I want you to become the kind of person who crosses the street. He let it sit. That's the first thing, and it's the one that matters, and I'll know if you don't do it because the world's small and word gets around. Victoria's throat worked. And the second thing, Logan almost smiled. The second thing's smaller. I got a daughter who's going to want to go to college someday, and a shop that runs on a prayer and a car I can't quite afford to replace. He shrugged. You got a company that makes the best machines in the country. So if Sterling Dynamics ever needs a fella to look at the things the engineers say can't be looked at the ones that come back marked beyond repair. You call me. Independent. By the job. I stay here. I keep my shop. I raise my girl. And every now and then you send me the impossible ones, and I tell you what's really wrong with them. Because, ma'am, I'll let you in on something. He leaned in like a secret. Half the time with machines, and with people both beyond repair, just means nobody looked hard enough yet. And I've got a real bad habit of looking hard. And that is the agreement they reached, and it held for the rest of both their lives. Logan Carter never took the corner office. He stayed in Caldwell Falls in the shop with the 60-year-old sign and raised his daughter and fixed the town's cars. And a few times a year, Sterling Dynamics sent him the impossible ones, the prototypes the engineers had given up on the ones marked beyond repair, and a few times a year. Logan looked at them with his hands behind his back and his eyes closed, listening, and found the thing everyone else had missed. He sent Emma to college on it. She studied engineering. She works at Sterling Dynamics now in the prototype division under Priya, and she has a habit of finding what other people overlook, which she did not get from any school. And Victoria Sterling became slowly and with effort, and not always gracefully, the kind of person who crosses the street. She rebuilt the company from the inside out, not the technology. The technology was always fine, but the thing underneath it. She tore down the walls that let one man stand in a doorway and decide what she got to hear. She promoted on what people could do instead of what they wore or where they'd gone to school, or how comfortable they were holding court in a room. She kept a camp chair in the corner of her office, an actual folding camp chair that visitors found strange, and that she never explained except once to Emma, years later, when the girl was grown and asked about it. It's to remind me, Victoria told her, of the night I learned the difference between authority and wisdom. I had all the authority in the world, sweetheart, and I sat in that chair in the dark and watched your father do the wise thing for free, for a stranger who'd been cruel to him because somebody was stuck and he could unstick them, and where he came from, that was the beginning and the end of the conversation. She'd touched the worn canvas of the chair. I'd spent 40 years thinking the person with the power was the person who mattered. Your daddy taught me in one night that the person who matters is the one who looks harder than they have to at the thing everyone else gave up on. Years later, people in Caldwell Falls still told the story. The day the rich lady's car died in the middle of Main Street, and 3 teams of fancy mechanics said it was finished, and Logan Carter walked across the road and brought it back to life through the night, while the whole town watched. They told it the way small towns tell their best stories, a little bigger every year, the night a little longer, the car a little deader, the miracle a little brighter. But the heart of it, they never had to exaggerate, because the heart of it was already true. A machine, worth $40 million, sat dead on the pavement, and an army of certified experts pronounced it beyond saving. And a single father in a grease-stained shirt, a man with no degree, no title, no fortune. A powerful woman had looked down on the moment she laid eyes on him, looked at the one thing everyone else had overlooked and refused to call it dead, and was right. Because real talent doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears a work shirt and stays up all night for a stranger and asks for nothing and quietly changes everything. And the day you learn to see it, the day you stop measuring a person by their clothes, their job, or the town they live in, and start measuring them by how hard they're willing to look at what everyone else gave up on, is the day you finally understand what was worth anything all along. Never call a thing beyond repair until someone who truly cares has looked at it with their own two hands. Not a machine, not a deal, and especially not a person.